The status of lake trout restoration in Lake Michigan can be summed up in 4 words. The good news continues. In this report, progress toward lake trout restoration will be gauged by comparing observed characteristics of the lake trout population with established benchmarks. These benchmarks are outlined in the implementation strategy by Dexter et al. 2011. Dale Hansen and Ted Truska played a huge role in coordinating this multi-agency effort and putting together this report. The agencies include U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, Little Bay Bands of Odawa Indians, Sioux Tribe, Little River Band of Ottawa Indians, Michigan DNR, Illinois DNR, Indiana DNR, Wisconsin DNR, Michigan State University, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and the U.S. Geological Survey. Data for this report come from Fishery Independent Spring and Fall gillnet surveys, a survey of the angler catch, and records of lake trout harvest, both commercial and recreational. Gillnet survey sites are shown on this map. The Northern Refuge and Southern Refuge are outlined in gray. One of the fish community objectives is to establish a salmonine community capable of sustaining an annual harvest of between 2.7 and 6.8 million kilograms, of which 20 to 25% is lake trout. Now, during most of the years of the 1985 to 2021 time period, annual lake trout harvest fell within the prescribed levels. However, during most of the years of the same time period, the percentage of the total salmonine harvest represented by lake trout was either below 20% or above 25%. Annual lake trout harvest was within prescribed levels for most of the years, but the percentage of total salmonine harvest represented by lake trout was either below 20% or above 25% for most of the years. During 2018 to 2021, it was above 25%. Another fish community objective is to establish a self-sustaining lake trout population. Results from the Great Lakes Mass Marking Program, which is based on surveying angler catch, indicate that 48% of the lake trout in Lake Michigan during 2021 were unclipped or wild fish. The estimate of this percentage from gillnet surveys was lower at 17%. In general, the percent unclipped estimates were higher for southern waters than for northern waters. However, in 2021, a relatively high percentage was recorded at Sturgeon Bay, which is in the north. Percent unclipped estimates were relatively low for lake trout from MM3. Overall, percent unclipped estimates were highest for angler caught fish, second highest for fish caught in the fall gillnet survey, and lowest for fish caught in the spring gillnet survey. Overall, percent unclipped estimates were higher in the southern waters. However, 73% of the lake trout caught in the fall gillnet survey at Sturgeon Bay in 2021 were unclipped. We also see a recent increasing trend in percent unclipped lake trout in Grand Traverse Bay, also located in the north. Additional evidence for natural reproduction by lake trout comes from the bycatch of the commercial bloater fishery, where about 20% of the captured lake trout during 2011 through 2014 were unclipped fish. Further, 70% of the lake trout caught during the annual bottom trawl survey of Lake Michigan conducted by the Great Lakes Science Center were unclipped during 2008 through 2021. Prior to 2008, less than 2% of the captured lake trout were unclipped fish. Results of aging wild lake trout caught in gillnet assessment surveys indicate the onset of production of wild lake trout in Lake Michigan occurred sometime around 2005. Coincidentally, adult alewife abundance in Lake Michigan dropped to a low level by 2005, and this decline continued through 2015. A maximum target of 3.53 million yearling equivalents per year has been set, and interim targets have also been set. To date, annual lake trout stocking rate has not exceeded the maximum target. Stocking rate exceeded the interim target during 2005 to 2017, but was under the interim target level during 2018 to 2021. On a lake-wide basis, annual lake trout stocking rate increased by about 35% between 2000 and 2010, but then decreased by about 25% between 2015 and 2021. A target mortality of annual mortality rate for lake trout between the ages of 6 and 11 not exceeding 40% has been set. In MM 1, 2, and 3, annual mortality rate has approached this target level during 2015 to 2017. In WI 3, 4, and 5, annual mortality rate has been under this target level since 1999. The red line represents the annual mortality rate target of 40%. In MM 1, 2, and 3, annual mortality rate is approaching the target level. In WI 3, 4, and 5, annual mortality rate in 2017 was only 14%. Evaluation Objective 1. Increase average catch per unit effort, or cpue, to greater than 25 fish per 1,000 feet of net in the spring gill net survey. On a lake-wide basis, average spring cpue remains well under the target level of 25 fish per 1,000 feet of net. However, in the Southern Refuge, this target level was exceeded in 2019 and 2021. The red line represents the target level of 25 fish per 1,000 feet of net. The black circles represent mean cpue for hatchery and wild lake trout pooled, and the blue line represents catch rate for wild lake trout only. You can see that in an overwhelming number of cases, cpue in the spring gill net survey is well below the target level of 25 fish per 1,000 feet of net. However, in the Southern Refuge in 2019 and 2021, the target level is exceeded. Evaluation Objective 2. Increase the abundance of adult lake trout in the fall gill net survey to a minimum of 50 fish per 1,000 feet of net by 2019. On a lake-wide average basis, cpue in the fall gill net survey has been well above 50 fish per 1,000 feet of net since 2015. Of all locations in the lake, the highest long-term average for cpue in the fall gill net survey has been attained in the Southern Refuge. In the Northern Refuge, cpue in the fall gill net survey has averaged about 75 fish per 1,000 feet of net during 2018 to 2021. The red line represents the target level of 50 fish per 1,000 feet of net, and the black circles represent mean cpue for hatchery and wild lake trout pooled, and the blue line represents catch rate for wild lake trout only. On a lake-wide average basis, cpue in the fall gill net survey has been well above 50 fish per 1,000 feet of net since 2015. Averaging across years, the highest cpue in the fall gill net survey occurs in the Southern Refuge. In the Northern Refuge, cpue in the fall gill net survey has averaged about 75 fish per 1,000 feet of net during 2018 to 2021. Evaluation Objective 3. Attain lake trout spawner populations that are at least 25% female and contain 10 or more age classes older than age 7 based on the fall gill net survey. On a lake-wide basis, over 25% of the lake trout caught in the fall gillnet survey are females. More than 10 age groups older than age 7 have already been documented at the Southern Refuge, Julian's Reef, Waukegan Reef, and Sturgeon Bay in the past few years. In the Northern Refuge, the number of age classes older than age 7 has been steadily increasing over the past 4 years. So progress has been made toward attaining this benchmark in the Northern Refuge. The red line represents the 25% female target. On a lake-wide basis, over 25% of the lake trout caught in the fall gillnet survey are females, although you can see that for some combinations of year and location, the percentage is below 25%, especially in the 2 refuges and Sturgeon Bay. Evaluation Objective 4. Detect a minimum of 500 viable lake trout eggs per square meter with egg thymin concentration greater than 4 nanomoles per gram. When and where lake trout egg densities have been measured in Lake Michigan, egg densities have been low, well below 500 viable eggs per square meter. In general, though, thymin concentrations in eggs exceeded 4 nanomoles per gram during 2005 to 2021. In 2020 and 2021, mean egg thymin concentrations were either just above 4 nanomoles per gram or below 4 nanomoles per gram. When and where egg densities have been measured in Lake Michigan, egg densities are low, well below 500 eggs per meter squared, with the possible exception of this measurement in Little Traverse Bay in 2000. The dashed line represents the target level of 4 nanomoles per gram for egg thymin concentration. In general, egg thymin concentration exceeded 4 nanomoles per gram from 2005 to 2021. In Milwaukee, in 2020, egg thymin concentration was below 4 nanomoles per gram and then just above it in 2021. In summary, natural reproduction by lake trout in Lake Michigan has substantially increased during the past 15 years, and this increase coincides with reduced alewife abundance. Based on the Great Lakes Mass Marking Program sampling, remember, this is the sampling of angler-caught fish, 48% of the lake trout in Lake Michigan in 2021 were unclipped or wild fish. Now, based on the gillnet assessment sampling, 17% of Lake Michigan lake trout in 2021 were unclipped or wild fish. The greatest rate of natural reproduction appears to be occurring in southern waters, including Illinois, MM6, 7, and 8, in the Southern Refuge. However, signs of a recent increase in natural reproduction in the northern waters are now evident, especially at Sturgeon Bay, but also Grand Traverse Bay. Annual mortality rate remains well below the target level of 40% in WI 3, 4, and 5, and is now nearing the target level in MM 1, 2, and 3. Lake trout catch per unit effort, or cpue, in the spring gillnet survey remains well under the target level of 25 fish per 1,000 feet of net on a lake-wide basis. Averaging across the lake, lake trout cpue in the fall gillnet survey has exceeded the target level of 50 fish per 1,000 feet of net since 2015. Of the lake trout caught in the fall gillnet survey, over 25% of them are females on a lake-wide basis since 1998, and more than 10 age groups older than age 7 have been documented at the Southern Refuge, Julian's Reef, Waukegan Reef, and Sturgeon Bay in the past few years. and we are getting closer to reaching this benchmark in the northern refuge. In sum, the good news continues. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be glad to answer questions.